Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi says Russia and India stand together even in difficult times. The two leaders praising their ties at a time when New Delhi's relations with Washington are strained over the purchase of Russian oil. Mr. Putin describing the two nations as close and trusted friends. He says that friendship bloomed because of public support for their alliance and not because of politics.
Уважаемый господин премьер-министр, дорогой друг, Россия и Индия поддерживают десятилетиями особые отношения, дружеские, доверительные. Это фундамент для развития наших отношений в будущем.
Mr. Modi also using the meeting to highlight peaceful initiatives for the war in Ukraine. He said he hopes all sides will move together constructively, calling for an early resolution of that war in Ukraine.
Excellency, यूक्रेन में चल रहे संघर्ष के विषय में हम लगातार चर्चा करते रहे हैं। हाल में किए गए शांति के सभी प्रयासों का हम स्वागत करते हैं। हम आशा करते हैं कि सभी पक्ष कंस्ट्रक्टिवली आगे बढ़ेंगे, संघर्ष को जल्द से जल्द खत्म करने और स्थायी शांति स्थापित करने का रास्ता खोजना होगा। ये पूरी मानवता की पुकार है। एक्सेलेंसी, एक बार फिर आपका मैं हृदय से बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूँ।
And more, we are joined by Dasha Chernyshova live from Moscow and Ishan Garg live for us from New Delhi. Let's start with you first, Dasha. This summit of the SCO giving everyone a chance to present itself as a dependable partner. Russia as well taking that chance to show it's reliable to China and India, given that all three face pressures from Washington.
That's right. The Russian president, who has been speaking at the SCO there, has also been supporting the idea of the global governance reform, suggesting that the world order should be more just and equitable, and saying that the SCO can actually play a leading role here. Now, this is obviously in support of the Chinese proposals, but the Russian president has had bilateral talks with the Chinese president, stressing once again that in those negotiations, the two were talking about the results of Russian-American summit in Alaska, and the Russian president is definitely trying to make sure that the position that Russia is transparent to the Americans is absolutely clear to the Chinese partners, and therefore this strategic partnership, no-limit partnership that was declared in the weeks leading up to the start of Russia's special military operation in Ukraine is upheld. On the Indian track, we have seen also the two leaders, Narendra Modi of India as well as Russian president, getting to the venue of the negotiations in one car, and the two have been talking about bilateral relationship which has the status of special privileged partnership. The Russian president saying that he is indeed expected to travel to India later this year. The two talking about the trade and economic relations, which have actually seen a very positive trend over the course of the past months, with Russia exporting more and more energy to India, but also supporting India in that sense, stressing that Moscow is going to benefit, to play a positive role, and India is going to benefit from those supplies from Russia. But also on the track of military supplies, we also understand that there was a number of contracts that were actually multiplied by the two sides, with Russia supplying more weapons to India. So what Russia is trying to do is to build the bilateral tracks, as well as to make sure that all of these countries are cooperating within international organizations such as the SCO and BRICS.
Ishan, we heard Dasha there referring to that those very warm photo ops between Prime Minister Modi and President Vladimir Putin, including that almost hour-long car ride which Mr. Putin offered to Mr. Modi. Mr. Modi, we just heard him calling for an end to that war in Ukraine. Given that India does buy a great deal of oil from Russia and therefore provides much-needed funds to the Russian economy, does Mr. Modi have any place to play in actually mediating for a peace in Ukraine?
Well, India's position has been that it wants to create multiple poles of power in the world, and it wants to align itself with as many countries as possible. And as a result of that, we find India in a position where it's very close to Moscow in one hand, it's getting close to China on the other. And throughout past several years, it has maintained a very close relationship with the United States, though that relationship might be strained by President Donald Trump's position on tariffs on India. So as a result of India's policy, we are seeing India in a position where it can play peacemaker. Now, Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of the country, has said several times in the past that this is not the time for war, and he has asked President Vladimir Putin to consider the option of diplomacy and dialogue. And once again, in his meeting, he reiterated that steps must be taken to ensure that there is sustained peace between Russia and Ukraine. The question becomes, is the Russian side going to listen to New Delhi? The answer probably is yes. But the question also is, are the other parties going to listen to India, which includes not only Ukraine, but also one of their biggest supporters, the European Union and the United States? We also saw some reports coming through that Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky might be looking at coming to India, and that kind of bolsters India's image as a potential peacemaker. But the question of whether EU and the United States would also support this idea, that remains to be seen.
Chernyshova live from Moscow and Ishan Garg live from New Delhi.